Beyond the city walls lies an ancient ghost town inhabited by unknown creatures. Legends say that these creatures devour every person trying to get into their terrible city. Dark shadows lurk in the narrow alleys, forcing those who dare to enter this gloomy city to experience incredible horror. One day, 3 brave travelers decided to explore this cursed city. They came to the old gate of the ghost town and boldly went inside. Immediately, they felt that something incomprehensible was watching them from the darkness. Footsteps could be heard behind them, but when they turned around, no one was in sight. Climbing the stone streets, they came across the ruins of ancient buildings surrounded by an ominous atmosphere. Suddenly, one of the researchers disappeared suddenly, and his screams began to sound from afar. The other two rushed to find their friend, but their search was unsuccessful. Fearing for their lives, they continued their endless flight through the gloomy streets of the ghost town. The cold wind carried their cries through the ravines of the destroyed buildings, and hungry creatures were lying in wait for them at every step. Suddenly, a door opened in front of them, leading to an ancient torchlit temple. Together with their last efforts, they rushed inside, hoping for protection from the dark forces. The temple turned out to be empty. The researchers, gasping, hugged in fear, realizing that they could be trapped. But at that moment, a whisper came from the depths of the temple, as if the wind was carrying someone's words. "You have landed in our treasure, and now you have to pay the price for your invasion," was heard in response to their prayers. The sudden flicker of light and the response of dark shadows meant that the creatures had gathered to fight them. Despite the despair, the researchers found incredible courage. They stood up, ready to fight these mystical creatures. They came out of the temple and saw that the creatures surrounded them from all sides. Their eyes sparkled in the darkness. Their shadows were carried by the wind, containing thousands of years of darkness and fear. But the researchers were not going to give up. They took advantage of the last drop of light in the temple to proclaim their determination. Hope for survival flashed in their eyes, and they entered the battle with evil, which many considered only a fairy tale. A gloomy silence penetrated as the explorers carried on their battle. Their weapons glowed with a bright light, reflecting off the creatures' eyes. And although there was a chance that they would die, the researchers were not going to give up without a fight. The battle went on for a long time, and each of them felt tired and desperate. But they did not stop. Their screams resounded throughout the city, reminding the creatures that humans can also be strong and determined. The strength of the researchers began to deplete, but now the light became brighter, embracing sinister silhouettes. Suddenly, the shadows began to fade, dissipating under the warm light. Understanding flashed on the researchers. The creatures were running away from the light. They shone the light into the dark corners with all their might, and the ominous shadows began to recede. Suddenly, the ghost city began to shake. The walls of the temple trembled and vibrated, then shook violently, and the ancient city began to collapse. Shadows disappeared, and dark forces were destroyed. The researchers got outside, where the bright morning sun was waiting for them. Trembling with terror and fatigue, they realized that they had survived hell and fought evil. They returned to tell the world about the horrors that the ghost town hid, and about their victory over the dark forces. Despite the fatigue and the horrors experienced, the researchers realized that their struggle was not over yet. They had to return to civilization to warn the world about the horrors that the ghost town harbored. They made their way through the ruins of abandoned buildings and gloomy streets. In the end, they got out of the devastated city and headed for the first human settlement. They told their story to local residents living near the ghost town. Many did not believe them at first, assuming that it was just a fairy tale or delirium due to exhaustion and fear. But desperate researchers begged them to believe, and finally they found sympathy and support. Local residents offered to help researchers in telling the world about what happened. They were willing to listen to their story and help them bring it to the rest of the world. The next morning, a group of researchers went to a local radio station to tell about their incredible adventure. But even after telling the story on behalf of the researchers, many people did not believe their story, considering it a myth or fiction. Some journalists and scientists have expressed doubt about the veracity of their words, claiming that the ghost town was just an abandoned place, and that the creatures they were talking about were just fiction. Whenever they told their story, it caused disagreement and distrust. However, the researchers were persistent. They decided to go to the ghost town again, but this time together with the strongest media and scientific experts to prove the truth of their words and find evidence of the existence of those creatures. The researchers returned to the gloomy ghost town accompanied by journalists, scientists, and television cameras. They walked together, driven by determination and courage, despite the fear that gripped them. When they arrived at the place, the ghost town seemed empty and abandoned. But suddenly in that evening, strange shadows appeared. Strange noises echoed around them. They felt that the creatures were catching up with them again. That expedition decided to disperse around this gloomy city to explore it and find signs of the existence of secret forces. Cameras filmed their every move, and scientists explored every corner of the place. But no indisputable evidence was ever found. Over time, it seems that nothing unusual has happened, and the media, scientists, and the public have begun to doubt the researchers' stories. However, at one point, one of the scientists discovered an ancient map that showed underground tunnels under the city. Deep into the underground tunnels, they came across an ancient temple full of symbols, incomprehensible writings, and statues. A sudden realization surrounded them. This is a place where mysterious beings with supernatural abilities lived. That expedition found long-forgotten scrolls with information about these creatures, known as Shadow Lords, who, as the legend said, were called from the world of darkness to protect their sacred place. They devoured everyone who tried to violate the sacred territory. Despite the horror and fear, the researchers resolutely continued their mission. They discovered ancient artifacts that could eventually bring light to the world of sharp shadows and unravel the secrets that lurked in the gloomy ghost town. Returning to the surface, they came to the conclusion that the world needs to know the truth about the ghost town and its ancient abode of Shadow Lake. Their next step was to bring this truth to the world and warn of the consequences of any attempts to invade this forbidden place. The researchers, supported by scientists, journalists, and local communities, began to promote their story. They fought to reveal the truth and are responsible for their betrayal, to warn the world about the existence of such an ancient and supernatural place. That expedition took on the task of revealing the truth about the ghost town and its mysterious inhabitants. They continued to explore ancient scrolls and artifacts, trying to understand the nature of the Shadowlanders and their connection with the city. With the participation of scientists and archaeologists, the expedition began serious research, analyzing the artifacts found and studying ancient scrolls. Together they tried to uncover the secrets of the ghost town in order to warn the world against the potential threat of Shadow Lake. However, as the research continued, they encountered obstacles and resistance. Many people still did not believe in the existence of Shadow Lake and considered the stories of the expedition fiction and fiction. The support they expected to receive was far from what they expected. The researchers faced distrust and denial, but they were persistent and determined to bring their findings to the public. Their resolve was revived by the impact of certain new evidence found in the depths of the ghost town. They found ancient scrolls that described rituals that allowed them to summon the powers of the Shadow Lords. This was the key that could shed light on the mysteries of the ghost town and its inhabitants. The researchers soon faced unpredictable consequences of their discoveries. The further they advanced their research, the more they attracted the attention of the Shadow Lords. Suddenly, the researchers began to disappear one by one, as if absorbed by the darkness of unknown forces. Since their return from the ghost town, people and the expedition began to disappear without a trace, and all their efforts to warn the world about their discoveries turned into a tragedy. Unexpectedly, the expedition lost contact, and there were no traces of the remaining researchers. In the already complicated history of the ghost town, they themselves became its victims. The legend of the ghost town remained ghostly, and the researchers who brought their discoveries to the world themselves disappeared, leaving only a mystery in the shadow of the gloomy streets, only adding a dark charm to this terrible place.